Breach is an overlooked 11-issue series from 2005. It was written by Bob Harris and illustrated by the sublime Marcos Martin. Originally, Breach was intended to be a reboot of Captain Atom, which is easy to determine considering the origin of Breach and the origin of Captain Atom are undeniably similar. Both characters are soldiers involved in a secret military project. There's an accident during an experiment, and they both lapse into a 20-year coma. When they awaken, they have new, incredible powers. After that, the two characters diverge dramatically. Captain Atom would become a pretty standard superhero. Breach would explore the consequences of becoming a powerful being and having no guidebook on how to deal with this sudden change. Breach is far more interested in character and slow-building subplots than in-your-face monthly conflicts, although there is a fair amount of straightforward action sequences. But despite the attention put on character, it's not a long mediation on or a deconstruction of the superhero. As a brief history lesson, Captain Atom was created by Joe Gill and Steve Ditko for Charlton Comics in 1960, although there was a character of the same name published by Nationwide Comics in 1950, but it was unrelated to the Charlton character. Captain Atom would then have a short-lived series in the mid-1960s as part of Charlton's attempt to capitalize on the superhero trend. After the series was cancelled in 1967, Captain Atom faded into obscurity. However, in 1980, DC bought a number of Charlton's superhero characters. It was an acquisition that included Captain Atom, Blue Beetle, and The Question, along with a few others like Peacemaker and Nightshade. In fact, Captain Atom was the original inspiration for Dr. Manhattan in Watchmen. Anyway, the character would get a solo series from DC in 1987. At the same time, the character would get a redesign to the more well-known full silver appearance. He would also become a member of Justice League Europe. The solo series would last until 1991, after which the character made various appearances and was, basically, a supporting character. So he still had a profile in 2005, but he wasn't regularly used in any capacity. Although, it should be noted, at roughly the same time Breach launched, there was an attempt to integrate Captain Atom into the Wildstorm universe. Or was he merely a deus ex machina to reboot it? Or maybe to integrate it into the mainstream DC universe? Question mark, big question mark. That's a messy, confusing situation. The point being, the stage was set for Captain Atom to be replaced. Allegedly, editorial decided against a reimagining of the character late in the process, and this abrupt, last-minute change is reflected in the first issue. In the comic, Nathaniel Adams, the civilian identity of the original Captain Atom, was changed to Tim Zanetti. However, in 2 panels, Zanetti is mistakenly referred to as Adams, which supports the fact that Breach was intended to be a Captain Atom reboot, and not all instances of the original name were changed before the issue was printed. There's no indication why this decision was made. Regardless, Breach was a distinct character. For a very brief time, that is. The story itself is about Major Tim Zanetti, who works for Project Otherside. This secret project is an attempt to make contact with and explore another dimension. Unfortunately, a test of the procedure goes awry, and Zanetti is pulled into the dimensional rift created by this accident. He is later discovered in the wreckage and appears to be the only known survivor. For the next 20 years, Zanetti lies in a comatose state. His body undergoes an inexplicable change due to exposure to another dimension, and it's implied the aliens on the other side of the rift made some alterations too. When he awakens, he has immense power, and he is now a new type of being. He is both human and something else. Breach has a very interesting, well-done premise. It has an equally interesting main character and supporting cast. As a modern update of an older concept, it simply works. The pace is even, and the tone is very consistent. The only criticism is there may be a few beats that border on melodrama, such as the Zanetti family dynamic 20 years later, and Zanetti being unable to remember his son. There may also be an unintentional hint of the contemporary fear concerning terrorist sleeper agents. But overall, it is a well-written series, with the exception of an unnecessary, forced crossover and an abrupt ending. It's an example of a solid mainstream title that simply never found an audience. Speaking of which, sales were clearly the reason this title was cancelled. Its first issue sold less than 17,000 copies, and by the 6th issue, the title was hovering around 9,000 copies sold. Even by 2005 standards, that was extremely low for a mainstream superhero comic. By its 11th issue, the series was officially cancelled. And let's also note, Breach had fabulous early artwork by Marcos Martin, who designed an outfit that was understated and unique. For that matter, all of the characters look distinct. There's just a beautiful simplicity that Martin puts on the page. It's always amazing to see how much he accomplishes with simple line work and shadow. The artwork alone should have drawn more attention to the title. Unfortunately, it did not. Following the untimely conclusion of the series, Breach made very few appearances. The only two notable ones are in Infinite Crisis and Countdown Arena. They're notable because Breach is killed in both of them. In Infinite Crisis from 2006, Breach explodes and suddenly, inexplicably, transforms into Captain Atom. This transformation is not explained whatsoever, it just happens. But it's obviously an acknowledgement of the connection between the two characters. In Countdown Arena from 2007, Breach is somehow resurrected by Monarch and then killed once again. It's almost as if there's someone in DC editorial making sure that the 8 fans of the character know he's dead, dead, dead. Which at this point seems to be the case. In recent years, the character has only been mentioned in passing as some weird alternate version of Captain Atom. In the end, it appears that Breach was considered an unnecessary addition to the DC universe. He was, as originally intended, another version of Captain Atom, or a replacement should he become popular enough. Obviously, this didn't occur, and since there was already one Captain Atom, another version was presumably considered irrelevant. Despite being a concept that was arguably more interesting than the original, Breach was put aside and has become a recent character intentionally placed into obscurity. Hello and welcome to some babble at the end. I swear, I'm not padding this video to hit the 8-minute mark. And I'm not intentionally doing that because YouTube avoids suggesting my videos unless they're at least that long. Yep, not doing that at all. Wouldn't think of it. Anyway, Breach is an interesting case study. I mean, all this time and energy was put into updating the character, and then, for whatever reason, he was thrown into obscurity almost immediately, and it wasn't a bad take on Captain Atom. I mean, I can understand the sudden transformation in Infinite Crisis. The logic is terrible, but it makes sense. But resurrecting the character just to kill him off by an evil version of Captain Atom? Yeah, that's just being mean. Now, I have to ask all you fine people, are there any characters you know of that were rebooted or reimagined, but then had a very short lifespan? Let me know in the comments below. Because I always find it fascinating when something just doesn't land, even though it's pretty good. Or for that matter, just terrible and misguided. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Doomsday Clock. Alright, that's enough from me. All that's left to say is, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, comment, and all that good stuff. Additional thanks to all those that directly support this channel and help keep the lights on. I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you.